Really excited to share with you today. And today I have decided, like with the slides, I'm just going to kind of tell you a story of how we got here, and filled some gaps and kind of niches along the way. Um, I would assume that most of you, as a part of STOPS, or some of you have heard about Embracing Life in some way or another. And if you haven't, and you want to hear more of kind of our original story, I have no problem kind of filling you in and touching base later. We're going to kind of pick up when I got here. So Embracing Life had been around since 2013, but I joined government in 2019. And I never really saw myself as a bureaucrat per se. I'm a little bit of a bull in a china shop, but I definitely saw myself as somebody who worked in public service. And I've been a part of the human services or working with people, or caring about people probably my whole life. And I'd be somebody to tell you that growing up the way I did, poor, in a violent home where drugs and alcohol were prevalent, where we rented. Neither of my parents drove. Neither of my parents had a credit card, or didn't have a credit card by the time I came along. The oldest of six, and just lived in violence and poverty and trauma and what I call survivor mode. And so teachers and helpers and people like you, who are listening today, are people who helped save my life 30 years ago. And so I love that I get to do this type of work. So I try to emulate or be the adult in people's lives that I wish I had when I was a young person. And so when we look at kind of what this is, I just really want to paint the picture of how we got here. So in 2019, Embracing Life, the initiative itself was very agency based, from the federal government with Indigenous Services Canada to tribal councils in the northern region. So Meadow Lake Tribal Council, Peter Ballantyne, PAGC, victim services. It was health, justice, government relations, the Child Advocates Office, school divisions, anybody who was doing community wellness and suicide prevention work off the side of their desk. And my fourth day with government, we were working with SHA, who had given us $60,000, and we met in Prince Albert with 35 young people from 18 different northern communities. And they were really trying to say, like, what do communities need? What do communities want? Agencies are stretched thin. Everybody is working on these things off the sides of their desk, from success coaches to friendship centers to frontline staff, wherever we were meeting the public. And it was like, what do you think? So tell us about the amazing things in your community. Tell us the things that you're not sure of. Tell us the things that are not working out from your perspective. And this is what young people had started to tell us. So we combined it with statistics. So right now, currently, as you're seated in your office, 1 out of 5 adults in Saskatchewan and Canada experience negative mental health during some time in their life. And I just want us to just evaluate that stat, 1 in 5. So look at the number of people who are here. Currently, there's 5 of us struggling with negative mental health. Now, we all have mental health. So that's one thing. We've all had good days and bad days and what that looks like. And my question about this stat, both for Saskatchewan and our beautiful country, is 1 in 5, really? What about the other 4 out of 5? Do we deal with our mental health in isolation? My husband will tell you absolutely not. When Brandi is having a bad day, I am also having a bad day. And I mean that to be a little bit funny, but at the same time, think about your coworkers, think about people, think about yourself when you're not doing well and how that affects the people around you. And that's just what I want us to take from there. Some of the stats in 2019, right before COVID, coming into this, at a table that no longer exists. This report was released by SACW, the Saskatchewan Alliance for Youth and Community Wellbeing. Their Thriving Youth and Thriving Communities report that was released at the end of 2019 highlighted some really scary things across our province. 21.6% of youth reported having been engaged in self-harm at some point in their life, while 66% of those young people having self-harmed in the last year. 1 in 3 youth who had self-harm reporting not knowing where to go. 48.3% of those youth who had never considered suicide, who had considered suicide, had never seen a therapist or a mental health counselor. One of the biggest pieces was they didn't know where to go. And then youth experiencing negative health outcomes were 2 times more likely to engage in risky behavior. And risky behavior being binge drinking, unprotected sex, and then trying new drugs outside of marijuana. And in most cases, while they were using alcohol. We have this room full of young people. And so we started asking some questions. And we learned very, very quickly in this room that adults needed to stop talking and we needed to listen. Because young people were saying, the adults that we work with, the adults that are in our life, the adults that tell us the youth are our future, yeah, but us to death. And they use those terms, yeah, but us to death. And I'm like, what do you mean by yeah, but? I don't like, is this cool new language you guys are using, like stigma and skibbity and things I don't understand as a 40-year-old woman? And it was like, no. Young adults, whether they invite us to meetings or they tell us we need to capture the youth voice or the youth are our future, they then invite us to these tables. We get brave enough to actually try and participate at those tables. And then adults will say, yeah, nice idea, Michelle, but we did that 5 years ago and it's not going to work. Yeah, thanks, Jody, but that's really expensive and I don't think you understand how complex budgets are. Yeah, thanks, Marissa, but like that's a really big idea and I don't think you know that like we have to have real ideas with foundations that we can proceed with. Yeah, thanks, Taylor. That doesn't really sound like a tangible thing that we could be a part of. So instead of us as adults doing what we say we want to do, we become the adults in the room and we create this hierarchy where we make them feel like kids and we don't seem to value them. And this isn't including me, including how we do it. I think sometimes it's just a natural thing. We think we have to take care of them, but we don't help empower their ideas. And that's how they're feeling. And one of the most powerful things they told us, this second line is a quote. Adults talk about what is best for us without us. How powerful is that? We don't actually include them in the conversation. So they don't, you know what? You're going to decide anyway. Oh, you know what I need? How many times have we put programming together and then we're surprised when nobody shows up because we thought it would be cool, but we never actually checked in if youth even think that's cool. Because we think we're still cool. Kids told us grief and trauma are driving factors for how they're feeling. They are using those words, grief and trauma. We use alcohol to cope. We don't want or we don't know how to feel the feelings we're feeling. There's so much stigma around talking about mental health. I don't want to help those around me because I don't know how. And I'm scared my friends will be angry if I bring in additional help. If I go and tell my friend, if I go say, oh, Sarah, I'm really worried about NOFA. Maybe we need to bring in an adult. I don't have a lot of healthy adults in my life that I trust to talk to. Bam. We ended up doing a survey of 105 young people right after this during COVID. And 81% of them said they do not have a healthy, trustworthy adult in their life that they can talk to about their mental health. And I just want us to think about the amount of adults that come in contact with our young people. Teachers, administrators, neighbors, friends, parents, coaches, volunteers, aunties, uncles. Think of the adults in our children's lives and how powerful that is. And then they told us things, and I saw adults in the room like take a deep breath and go, crap. I said, what do you need to be successful? Name what you need to be successful. Overwhelmingly, the room said, we want hope for tomorrow and we want to feel like we belong. Lots of adults in the room were like, oh God, like how do we do that? And I was like, hope and belonging that's my wheelhouse. Like we can do hope and belonging, right? We want to empower young people so they have hope for tomorrow and they want to belong to something, a team, a group, an after school program, a community, a family, a friend group. Belonging can mean so many different things. So what could we do with this information? And so as we started going through COVID, right, the whole world shut down. We're going through COVID. We started trying to ask stakeholders, how far is this away from adults? Adults said, through our stakeholder agencies, over 25 agencies, working professionals, there's so much pressure to be at your best all the time. Grief and trauma are driving factors for how we're feeling as adults. Social media compounding that of keeping up with the Joneses, right? Two major factors for negative health. Nobody puts their bad days on Facebook. We put our amazing days on Facebook. We celebrate. Look at my new house. Look at my new car. Look at my new puppy. Look at what my kid did. Hey, look at my new haircut. We don't put, smeared eyeliner, awful stuff on Facebook. People only, it's a tiny piece of someone's life that is on social media. We are told at work it's okay to talk about mental health and wellness, but when we do, it's used against us. And sometimes purposefully and sometimes not. And an example of this was somebody in government reached out to me. They were having a really, really hard time. They were separating from their spouse. And work was the only thing that was saving them from, in their words, going insane. They had, something to take their mind off their personal life. And they went and spoke to their supervisor and said, I know we have a really huge meeting on Monday. This file is really important to me, but I'm just going to take Thursday afternoon and Friday off. Everything is ready, but I'm moving out of my family home. My spouse and I are separating. I'm really struggling and I just need some time. And the supervisor was great. Of course, take the time. Is there anything that you need? Do you have everything ready? Yes. This person took Thursday afternoon and Friday off, had the weekend, moved into a very lonely one-bedroom apartment, trying to get their stuff organized, gets to work Monday morning, excited for this new challenge, this new file. And in the team huddle before the big client meeting at 10 o'clock, the supervisor had given the file to someone else. And the supervisor, we could all hate on the supervisor, and the supervisor felt like they were supporting and helping. Well, this is a lot. This is a big deal. We want to make sure this person comes back in a good way. Of course, you're still a part of the team. You're just not the lead. I want you to be able to take care of yourself. But the communication that the employee felt was like, I came in, I bared my soul. I told you how I was doing. I told you what I needed, and you made decisions without me. You thought that you knew what was best for me without talking to me. Very similar than what our youth said, making decisions about us without us. Employers are doing the same thing. Adults, us, we want to belong and fit in. Everyone around me seems to have their stuff together. Why can't I? At work, I don't want people to know I'm struggling. I don't want people to use it against me. I don't want to be stigmatized as having mental health or mental illness. It's so competitive. I don't want to hurt my reputation. So we're collecting all of this information. And then some young people phoned me, said, Brandi, I'm really worried about my friends and my family. And it's the it's the end of 2020, nearing Christmas or New Year's for 2021. What do you think we can do? And I said, I don't know. And they said, have you ever built an app? And I said, No, but we can Google it and we can learn. And so that is what we did. So this is the QR code for the app that we built in community. This app was 100% built by regular people worried about regular things and gaps in service of spaces of what things look like. What did we talk about? We spent 18 months writing and rewriting and cultivating, and we raised $150,000. Embracing Life is not government funded. We apply for grants for projects to fund. We raised $150,000 to support this work. And the app is twofold. This was really, really important to young people because they didn't want there to be a stigma for having this app on your phone. How do I support myself? How can I check in with myself? How can I set goals? It uses the medicine wheel. We brought in a Cree, a Dene, and a Métis elder to work together to make sure it was done in a really good way. And it's put together in a really good way as a non-Indigenous woman. It doesn't feel like I'm encroaching on a private or personal or holistic kind of Indigenous specific practice. How often do we as even adults check in with ourselves on multiple levels, right? I know talking to kids, trying to put words like, have you ever felt only one feeling at a time? Or have you ever felt really great physically, but tired and exhausted mentally? Or opposite, your brain is on fire with ideas and momentum and passion, and you're trying to move ideas forward, but you're exhausted all of the time. So imagine teaching. We were trying to subtly look at really good coping skills to give everyone, how am I feeling? How am I connected to myself? Emotionally, spiritually, and spiritually, not necessarily just about religion, but about the things around us, the things that we absorb ourselves in. The gratitude box is one of my favorite things. And this was a kid's idea. We were talking about safe spaces. And I live in northern Saskatchewan, a pretty rural community. And a lot of the young people that shared with us were from isolated communities, some fly-in communities, some very far away. One community in particular, doesn't have a nurse's station or an RCMP station. They are serviced from another community 50 kilometers away. So imagine living in a place with no police, no nurses, when something bad happens, and depending on neighbors and people and what that looks like. And so when they talked about gratitude or safe spaces, this one young person started saying, the only safe space I have is my room. And I try to surround myself in my room of things that make me feel good. So that's what the gratitude box was trying to do in the app. So it's a place you can journal. It's a place you can have things to make you laugh, things to make you feel special, things to make you feel important. You can have pictures of your family, your trap line, pictures of your ball team, pictures of the lake, pictures of your animals, pictures of your favorite things, your favorite memes, your favorite videos. Some of the things the young people who are using the app are doing, they're sending each other voice notes. Like, Carla, you are my best friend. It's so great to see your face. I can't wait to see you when I'm in Regina. I love you. I adore you. Thank you for supporting me. And they're sending these notes that when you're not feeling great and you're feeling like you have bad mental health, or you're starting to think bad thoughts when things aren't going well in your life, they can listen to somebody that loves them, tell them something amazing. And then safety planning, which we're going to talk about a little bit later. But safety planning. So the best thing in this app that I could say is in these safety plans, we start with what can I do on my own when I'm not doing well? Who can I call when that doesn't work? What do I need from them? What are my strengths? What are my reasons to live? And in this app, you can send that, a PDF will come. You can send that safety plan at the end by Facebook Messenger, by WhatsApp, by text, and by email. So I coach high school girls volleyball, 14, 15, 16, 17-year-old girls. I have 14 safety plans on my phone. And I have 3 girls who struggle pretty regularly within their home lives who update their plan to let me know what they need. And I just, I really want to talk about this at the end. And then the other piece of the app is how to take care of others, how to start those difficult conversations when I have a friend who I know is struggling and maybe starting to talk, saying things that might kind of bring up a flag, like, I don't even know what I'm doing here anymore. I don't even feel like what I do matters. I don't feel like I have, and who hasn't said something like that? And maybe we don't all mean suicide, but we've all had a bad day, and those bad days can lead to days, and they can lead to bad weeks, and they could lead to things where some of the things we talk to youth going, adults have that little voice in their head too. Like that little jerk that when we're feeling bad gets louder and louder and louder, that tells us we're not good enough, we're not smart enough. That imposter syndrome, should we be in this room? Brandi, who are you to even give this presentation? What those types of pieces. Resources for helpers, resources for anybody, and then crisis support. So we created an app, and we had youth help write it. We wrote drafts, and then we put it in front of cops and paramedics and nurses and doctors and mental health therapists and teachers and coaches and volunteers and EAs and government. And then we rewrote it and we took it back to the youth, and we spent 18 months rewriting it, and we launched it in March of 2022 on World Youth Wellness Day. And to be honest, I thought that it would take off. Kids thought we would be trending. I had to learn what trending meant. And we weren't. We had 100 downloads, and then we had 110 downloads, and we didn't light the internet on fire. But then this stuff started to come in. Like, my daughter and I downloaded this app together. This tool helped me save her life. No joke. This helped me talk to my daughter about her thoughts of suicide and helped her see that she's not alone. Thank you, Embracing Life. Teachers, I've already used this app today to help somebody with suicide. I'm blown away by this app. Teachers are asking for more tools. High schools want more tools. This app is a great tool. And so people started reaching out, and people do what people do when they love things. They start sharing it. And so I started on this presentation circuit using government, nurses and teachers and analysts and mental health, and seeing what we could do. And I was really wondering, how are we going to get this to take off? And then I went to the National Suicide Prevention Conference in Montreal, and the leading doctor for the Mental Health Commission of Canada, Dr. Brian Mascara, got up on stage in his keynote introductory speech for the week and said, 90% of the entire world's mental health is not dealt with by clinicians. It's dealt with by you. And I had my Homer Simpson moment, sitting in this huge lecture hall with 600 very educated clinicians, physicians, psychotherapists, all of these incredible, smart, gifted people wanting to try to make a dent in preventing suicide. And I sat there going, we are going about this the wrong way, trying to get this app into clinicians' hands and trying to do this. Imagine that. The entire world's mental health, 90% of the entire world's mental health is dealt with by friends and family. Of course it is. Who do you go to first? I don't walk into the emergency room when I'm having a really bad day or a bad mental health crisis, or when I'm not confident, or when I'm insecure, or when I get fired or break up, or when someone dies and I'm just struggling with how to deal with my next move. I don't call 911. I don't walk in for a risk assessment at mental health and addictions. I talk to my grandmother. I talk to my best friend. I talk to my favorite coworker. I talk to my husband when I think he's listening. Sometimes I talk to my kids. I got adult kids. Who do you talk to? Who talks to you? So I just thought, wow, like this is kind of the old school, neighbors supporting neighbors. And then I make a joke. Every time I make this presentation, I make a joke that the Ministry of Health in 5 years is going to send me a thank you card, because we are going to change the way regular people feel about talking about mental health, making sure we give regular people tools to have these conversations. So I was trying to I kept saying regular people. Who wants to be called regular people? Right? Nobody. We want to all be special. So how did we get this message out to society? Imagine coaches and volunteers talking not just about physical health, but checking in with mental health. Coworkers. You spend more time with your coworkers in an average week than you do your friends and family at home. Men and people in the LGBTQ2S community are right now at the highest risk of suicide in our province. We need to make sure that men feel like they can take care of themselves and ask for help. We need to make sure the most marginalized groups in our community, that we're creating inclusive spaces and that we're kind and empathetic. Giving parents tools to be able to talk to their kids, both moms and dads and grandmas and grandpas. We need to make sure that teachers and EAs and the adults in our children's life are more comfortable talking about mental health. As adults, our friend group, are we confident talking about mental health with our friends? Kids are talking to other kids. Kids are reaching out to other kids, 12 years old, 13 years old, 14-year-olds. They're talking about really serious, important things. My kids are coming home, or were coming home when they were still in high school, really heavy from things that some of their friends were dealing with, not knowing what to do about that. Volunteer roles. And then thinking of some of those roles where we think of, where do we see regular people talk a lot? Bartenders, hairdressers, cab drivers, people who are in service providing jobs where communication can go one way or the other. So with my relationship with STOPS and being on their leadership team and working through the STOPS journey, STOPS stumbled upon, with Tracy and Nofa, natural support language. And I said, I got to stop saying regular people. We're going to say the same thing. Natural support. Who do you naturally support? And who naturally supports you? One of our youth designed this in Canva, right? Thinking about yourself, your spouse, your grandparent, sibling, your parent, your best friend, coworkers, bosses, aunties, uncles, pets, children, neighbors, mentors, coaches, community members, friends, and then some apps and crisis lines to help support. One of the biggest things that we've heard at Embracing Life is people are not sure who they can reach out to with what. That they actually don't even know what kinds of supports are out there in our province. And there's so many, but we just don't do a good job advertising them together in a way. And so we thought, what could Embracing Life, what could our initiative do with all of this information that we have? We know that our clinical systems are, I wanted to say they were maxed out 2 years ago, and now they're maxed out again, because our incredible mental health teams and nurses and doctors and practitioners keep stretching themselves more. But as what we're noticing is that people are going, I really want to talk to my friend, but oh my God, that sounds really heavy, or that's a lot, or I have no idea what to say, and I do not want to say the wrong thing. And so we thought, we can help here. Why do we not talk about mental health more readily? I ask young people this. I ask young people, who has mental health? Everybody puts their hand up in the whole room, because we all have mental health. Has everybody here ever had a bad day? Put up your hand. Have you ever had 2 bad days in a row? Put up your hand. Have you ever felt like you weren't enough, you weren't doing enough, that you didn't know what your place in life was? Put up your hand. And you see all of these hands go up, and you see young people and even professionals. I've done this in a room with 200 teachers. Start looking around going, oh my God, you felt that way? What? You're amazing. How have you ever felt like you weren't enough? That's crazy. You're incredible. You do this, 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 this. And so why is there so much stigma around mental health if we all know what it's like to struggle with mental health? How do we reframe stigma? If we all have mental health, why can't we just be kinder and more empathetic to one another because we understand what it's like to break up with someone or to be dumped? We understand what it's like to lose somebody close to us, to have a pet die, to not feel like we're good enough. So really trying to look at stigma and addressing that in ways that community can get behind, right? And I think one of the biggest things that we've seen from young people is kind of breaking down that hierarchical relationship between adults and youth. No, you know what? I'm having a bad day too. I've gone into volleyball practice actually just Tuesday this week. Really busy weekend. We're hosting 4A provincials in La Ronge. There are some teams and people who are not happy. They have to come to La Ronge for the weekend, saying not very nice things about our community. Me going, there's amazing things here and trying to stay positive. And on Tuesday, I put on a smile and I'm like, you know what, ladies? I've been trying to fake it all day, but I'm really struggling today. And I hope you offer me a little bit of grace through practice. And they were amazing. But I can't be worried about always having to try to keep my shit together so these 14 girls see that I'm a strong woman. Well, they already know that. So I've shared with them, you know what? Let me know when you're having a bad day so I can make sure I offer you an extra little piece of grace. Or I don't try something new that day so you don't come to practice already feeling awful. And then I say, let's try a new skill where everybody's going to fail for the first 40 minutes of practice. You got to be in a good headspace to be prepared to struggle through something. Mental health versus mental illness debate. We have to stop using these two things synonymously. They are not the same thing. Full stop, period. Maybe period, full stop. But these are not the same thing. A mental illness is a clinical diagnosis, and that carries so much more stigma than mental health. But we are not doing ourselves any favors by using these things together. There's nothing wrong with having a mental illness, right? But it is a clinical diagnosis. It is something that you're seeing a physician for. It is a private relationship. Mental health and mental illness are not the same. And we have to make sure that we're using that language. That's going to open those doors to be able to have more conversations to get rid of stigma. Understanding warning signs. And here's the thing. I think we do understand warning signs. When you think about your own life and we reflect, you know when someone in your life is not doing well. Everybody has their own warning signs. I think sometimes we as people don't always understand what our warning signs individually are. If you're self-reflective and awesome. I really struggle. I don't necessarily know. I'm trying to get better at it. But making sure that when we see somebody, and I'll use myself as an example again, like I'm a pretty outgoing gal. I can talk to any stranger. I will make conversation with absolutely anybody. I say good morning to every single person in the office. I am glass half full all the time. When I am not doing well, I still say good morning, but I'm quiet. I might close my office door where my office door is always open, but I might close my door. I might not go to team coffee. I might just kind of, sit and I isolate myself and I'm quiet. And when I'm quiet, people are like, ooh, something's wrong. Are you okay? Yeah, just processing something. Or no, I'm not okay and I need a friend. And so understanding and being, cognizant of the people that we love around us and not being afraid to say, hey, no, you haven't seen yourself these last few days and I'm worried about you. Is there anything that you want to talk about? I'm here. I love you. I want to make sure that you're good. Because the big three things that adults told us they were worried about, talking about mental health and leading down the road to talking about, potential suicide ideation and suicide. Three big things: fear, liability, responsibility. That's what adults were worried about. Do I have enough time to fix Brandi's life? No. Brand, how you doing? I'm not really doing good. I need a friend. You're strong. Buck up. Put a smile on your face, babe. You're great. Thanks, pal. But no engagement because Brandi's life's a disaster. We as adults, especially as helpers and fixers, and I'm assuming you're all helpers and fixers because of the work that you do, in those spaces, is we think that we have to fix an issue or a problem instead of just going, holy Bran, wow, like that sounds like a lot. How are you dealing with all those things going on in your life? Like, are you taking good care of yourself? We have to teach people our natural supports. This is not about fixing. This is just about listening. How many times have you, if I take you personally, down that journey, have you been struggling? How long does it take while you're struggling before you tell somebody? If you can say right away, that's amazing. I have to mull it over. And again, that jerk in my head gets louder and louder telling me how crappy I am. And so a lot of times, and I have worked in, I would say, suicide prevention for the last 15 years. I've been a crisis responder for the Kids Help Phone. I'm a community crisis responder here in my community. I have asked, are you thinking about suicide? Probably 2,000 times in my coaching, volunteering, and professional life. And it doesn't necessarily get easier in the realm of, oh my God, why would you just say that? But I will tell you that most people who are thinking about suicide, in the response, I want to say, 1,800 of them have been relieved to say, like, I can talk about that here. Like, I can talk about those things here. You can talk about anything here. You're not going to judge me for wanting to give up. No, that's got to be a really hard feeling to deal with. And we right now in our society and in our things, we get so rigid and, oh my God, they said the word suicide. We need to get you help. You need help. You need a crisis line. You need 911. You need a mental health therapist. We need to get you to a counselor. We need to get you to space. And I just want to give you a quick example. I had a girl on my team who is really having a hard time. Her home life is awful. She's really struggling. And she got to school and she was hungry. Her favorite teacher noticed that she was off. She'd been in the same clothes she wore the day before. She was in class and the teacher had gone and said, hey, we'll call her Jane. Jane, are you okay? No, Mrs. B, I'm not okay. I'm really struggling. And now I'm scared. Like, my thoughts are really dark and I don't know what to do. And like, I'm really scared for myself. Like, I've been thinking about suicide and stuff. Mrs. B goes, oh my goodness, Jane, that sounds horrible. Let's go for a walk. And I have my spare next. Maybe let's go see if the school counselor is there and there's some things that we can talk about. So Miss B takes Jane to the school counselor. School counselor is crazy. She's got a stack of files on her desk. There were 2 students sitting outside of her office. She was on the phone, and Mrs. B thought it was so important that she actually knocked on the door and interrupted the phone call. And the school counselor goes, oh my goodness, okay, Jane's here. Oh, that does sound, pretty serious. You know what? Let me call over to mental health and addictions. In La Ronge, the high school is here, and not even a block away is the hospital where the clinic and mental health and addictions is. So they call over. It's not busy. They can go and do a risk assessment and have a conversation with this young girl. The teacher even offers to walk her over. It's a nice day. Jane is actually right now feeling really supported. 2 people have hugged her, have said nice things to her. She feels like, oh my goodness. So they get to mental health. Mental health intake worker was wonderful. They go through the paperwork, a risk assessment. They ask 4 or 5 questions. Jane, are you thinking about suicide? Yes, I think I am. Have you thought about how you do it? Oh, goodness, no, nothing like that. So you don't have a plan. or a timeline or the means to do it. Oh no, nothing like that. I'm just at a really, really scary part of my life. Mental health and addiction goes, okay. For those of you professionals working in that place, that means Jane is low risk to suicide. So that means that it's non-emergent. So they open up the mental health and addictions calendar here in La Ronge, and today is November 14th. They look through, okay, they say, well, here, they give her a tiny little card and say, here's your appointment for November 28th at 2 p.m. We'd love to see you. Let us know if you want us to come to the school or if you can make it here, or if transportation's an issue. And if something changes, let me know. And Jane takes the card and is quiet and walks away. And that is the reality of our system, not even for a youth and adult. It doesn't matter right now. What is one thing that not one adult did in that situation? Jane, why are you feeling that way? Jane, what's going on in your life to feel like you're struggling or that you don't matter? How are you dealing? Jane didn't even get a chance to tell her story. She didn't even get a chance to share what's going on with her. And none of those adults did a bad thing. They were all lovely and wonderful, but we've kind of forgotten to say, hey, what's going on? Open-ended questions and chatting. And talking about suicide is scary. And that's because everybody thinks that suicidal thoughts equal death. I don't want to talk about suicide. The myths of I don't want to talk about suicide, because what if that puts those thoughts and things in that girl's head? And I will tell you, asking, are you thinking about suicide over 2,000 times? It is not necessarily always, depending on kind of that spectrum. People don't just wake up one morning and want to die. People have been struggling. People are thinking like, why am I here? I don't want to be in this situation, in this place in my life anymore right now. And so I know this is a really heavy topic, but what can we do as natural supports before we get to that space? Imagine this huge pendulum spectrum. We need to do such a better job way at the beginning of that spectrum and pendulum to say, how are you doing? For real. Who are the real people in your life that you can have these conversations? Okay, now my slide won't, there we go. So we started talking to people about this, and we thought, you know what, we'll put some tips together. We'll put a presentation together. How can people do this and feel more prepared? Be kind. Listen to their story, not to reply. Don't make it about you. And sometimes this can be really hard, right? Because we try to find those connections. Somebody tells you something about a bad, let's use a breakup and how they've lost their identity and they feel like, I've been with this person for 10 years. Who am I now? Oh, I remember I broke up with somebody in 1995 and it was hell. Like, you can do that. This is a natural human thing that we do. We try to find connections so people feel like they're not alone. But people have been telling us, sometimes that feels like we start making their story about us and not necessarily keeping it on them. So instead, asking like, how are you dealing with that? Like that sounds really hard. What does that look like? Not panicking, being able to say, you know what, this is a really scary thing for me to talk about too, but I really care about you. And I want to make sure that we can get to the bottom of it together. You're not there to solve problems. We're just there to listen. Creating space for silence. This was a really tough one for me, if you could imagine. And then not trying to do that by like counting in my head. So I realized there was enough time to speak again. You don't have to have all the answers. One of the biggest things I found in crisis response, and even with the kids' help phone and the adult crisis line, was a lot of times people just had never said these things out loud. They'd never actually said them out loud to a human being. I didn't solve anything. They actually created a plan all on their own where I said, well, what do you think you could do about that right now? What could you do tomorrow or next week? What does that look like for you? And these aren't therapist-y things. This is just like, I don't have the answers. I don't know what you are. And I was talking to complete strangers who, in some cases, didn't even know my name. And so people remember the chaos of our own brains when we're trying to mull something over or put something together and we haven't said it out loud. And as you start talking, oh, you know what? Maybe I could do that. Oh, that doesn't sound as bad as it did in my head. Um, Asking them lots of questions to validate feelings. And the only thing I can say is if you do have a feeling, you need to trust your gut. You can't be afraid of asking the question, are you thinking about suicide? And you can't be afraid of, if you're afraid of somebody hurting themselves or hurting someone else, you can't be afraid of bringing in help or asking for help or sending help. I was working at the college. I was a head of student services at Northlands College. I had a student phone me and say, Brandi, I just want to call and say thank you. Thank you for helping me along this really hard journey of this year. Thank you for listening and for being a space and always finding time for me. Thank you for the drives and the coffee and, sharing a bit of your life with me. I just want to really tell you how important you are to me and thank you. And she hung up. And I thought it was really weird. And I thought it was really like it didn't sit well. And so I called the RCMP to do a wellness check. And she had slit her wrists and jumped into the bathtub. And I raced to her house and the RCMP were there and we bandaged her up, called the paramedics, and I raced to the hospital. She is alive today. But I was with my son this summer and we were getting some groceries to barbecue. I had my hair, in a rat's nest on my head. I had just come off the lake. We were heading out in the boat and we were going to have a whole bunch of people out on the water. We were picking up burgers and hot dogs. And she saw me and she had her cart and she was coming down the aisle with her two kids. And she saw me and she turned around and went the other way. And I really struggled with that. And I started tearing up. And my son said, Mom, don't you know her? And I said, I used to. He's like, what happened? And I had just said, I represent the worst day of her life. I represent her worst day. He's like, Mom, but why are you smiling? And I said, she's got two children. She's married. She finished her university degree. And she works with at-risk youth in this community. And she just avoids me. And maybe we will fix that one day. And maybe when she's healed and she's done some work, she can look at me as a friend again. But right now, I'm not that for her. And for me, she's alive. And so that's a really hard thing sometimes. I would rather not have a relationship with her and her be here, flourishing. Like she is killing it in life right now. And that warms my heart more than anything. On that note, as helpers, we have vicarious trauma. We take other people's crap in, and sometimes we carry that with us. And so boundaries are important. And following up is important. And so in the boundary space, it is okay to say, I don't know if I can be a part of this today. Whether when I'm struggling, I have a hard time helping others when I'm struggling. And the other thing about following up, I just want to say this does not have to be a full-time job with our people. Whether it's students, whether it's youth, whether it's your kids, whether it's coworkers, your friends. What I mean by following up is, have you ever bared your soul to your best friend or talked about something that you've been worried about, that you're insecure about, that's really been bothering you, and you let it out and you feel amazing after you say those things? And then you get in your car and you leave and you head home and you're in the mirror brushing your teeth and getting ready for bed. And you're like, oh my God, I can't believe I said all that. What is she going to think of me tomorrow? And then that little jerk in our head kicks in again. And it's like, what is NOFA going to think? I can't believe I said all of that stuff. And then just imagine your phone going off and that person going, thank you so much for the talk today. Thanks for trusting me. I really appreciated getting to know you more. I'm excited to see you tomorrow. Take care. And then just that like whoosh of anxiety, letting go. And that's all I mean by follow up is just a text that I'm here for you. You're so brave. Thank you so much. I can't wait for you to tackle what's in front of you. Just a little cheerleading comment that I think we all need that sometimes. And so that follow up is so important. And so embracing life is like, okay, how do we create opportunities for natural supports to have these really good conversations in that way? One of the biggest things we then hear is, I want to do this work. Do it. No, but I'm scared. You know what? Do it scared. Because if we don't start having these conversations, we are going to be in the same place that we are right now. And I'm telling you, in our province right now, our mental health and suicide ideation, self-harm and suicide rates, they are not going down. They are only getting worse. And so for us, regular people, I am not a social worker. I am not a doctor. I am not a mental health therapist. I was told, and I, with my work at the college, I was losing too many students to suicide. I felt like I was attending more funerals. I was attending more funerals than graduations. And so for me personally, my journey was becoming an expert in prevention, was becoming a crisis responder, was learning about every way that regular people, these natural supports, what could we do in our regular life to be able to have these conversations with the people that we love? Why do we do what we do? Embracing life. How are you going to help? So we started doing something. So we started trying to find gaps. So one of those gaps, kids and adults told us, we do not know where to go. We do not know who to call. We created a resource card. Now we have new ones now. I realized I did not replace this picture. We do now have 988 at the top, like the new national crisis line, 988. And we also have Regina's mobile crisis unit. PA has a mobile crisis unit. Saskatchewan has a mobile crisis unit. Youth designed them. Youth put them together. All of the supports that people can find in our province to call for help, including 811. You can still get a mental health therapist to talk to you calling 811. I have them. If you can't see me, I have them. If you want them, you'll have I just ordered 25,000. So they're tiny. They are the size of a debit card. Can you guys see a picture of me as well, or just the slides? Somebody tell me.
Yeah, we can see both.
You can see both. Okay. So just because I'm holding it and I'm like, am I just performing for myself? So this one right here, it's as big as a debit card. The young men who consulted on this wanted to be able to put it behind their phone, in their back pocket, in masculine, or I don't want to say boy wallets because wallets aren't gendered, but in wallets that men carry in their back pocket, or women in your back pocket, or people. God, Brandi, figure it out. Here they are. Next, we wanted to create stickers. So these stickers, young people originally designed for adults. They had said, we don't always know who a good adult to talk about our stuff with is. And so I thought it was hilarious because I promised to not yab at them, and I promised to help fulfill their goals and their dreams without adulting it. The stickers are so much bigger than the cards. And I thought that the card should be big and the sticker should be small. But they wanted them to be on laptops and computers and desks and office doors. And so, they wanted to, reach out. I care about your mental health. Mental health matters. I'm here from you. Your mind matters. And so these stickers, but one thing that we started seeing is adults were using them. So adults asked for them. So in those spaces, adults were saying at work with coworkers, when employers are trying to talk about mental health, and culture and psychological safety at work. Which coworker can I talk to? So coworkers were using them on their office door. You know what? You can talk to me about stuff like that. Helping get rid of stigma to be approachable and in spaces. We have just built, it will be launched in January. We hired a 17 and an 18-year-old and who worked with 55 young people from Saskatchewan all the way to Fond du Lac, from east to west, in spaces around what do they care about. So they've created worksheets. So we piloted it in grade 8, grade 9 curriculum this spring to take a look at what kids cared about. They picked the themes. They developed the worksheets. I helped them edit it. I helped pay for those spaces. We had adults take a look at it, teachers take a look at it. We are just finishing up the facilitator guide spaces on how to have conversations, how to be a support, how to ask for help. I'm really excited about this project. It's also, this resource is going to be free. This resource is going to be available to be downloaded off our website. And we also have some money to print them and send them out to coaches, to teachers, to spaces to use. We also had said, okay, Brandi, you guys are my 237th presentation since the launch of the app. This is not a one-person show, but I work with Embracing Life full time. So a lot of communities and a lot of people on the ground were saying, how do we govern or do Embracing Life? And so right now we're designing a community ambassador program, introducing Embracing Life, speaking notes, putting the PowerPoints together with slides and data, and having communities or a school or an organization have people who are already doing similar work, who have resource cards and posters and want to use the branding of Embracing Life to say, we want to work on these pieces too. We want to give more tools for natural supports, for regular people, for community members' pockets. This is what we want to do. And so this is the journey that Embracing Life has taken, is to not try to fill a void, to try to take on a role of putting more tools in people's pockets who work with people regularly, whether that is in a professional capacity or as a community member, as a neighbor, as a mother, and as a volunteer, or a father. And so there's my contact information. And this is a journey that we're continuing to explore. And one of the things before I let you go that I want to say that we are exploring as well is safety planning. And this relates to stops, and this is something that we're currently talking to Tracy and NOFA about, because it doesn't matter what the safety planning exists, whether it's for domestic violence or whether it's for suicide prevention or ideations in those realms. When do we ask people to safety plan? We ask people to safety plan at their worst. We ask people to safety plan in chaos. We ask people to safety plan when they are in it, in mental health and addictions, doing their risk assessment when they feel the worst about themselves. Why, as a society, why as systems, why as helping professionals, have we not looked at safety planning when we're well? And how do we look at that? I'm working on trying to pilot something currently in government. To imagine safety planning as part of orientation to your job. How do you like to be celebrated? What are your strengths? When you're not doing well at work, what do you need from your supervisor? Imagine safety planning at school. What's your favorite thing about school? When you're not doing well at school, what do you need from a teacher or a coach? Imagine safety planning or putting a thing together when they're asking about height and weight as a coach and what position you want to play. You know, how are you? How do you like to be treated? How do you like to be addressed? How do you like to be coached? When you like to be pushed, how do you like to be spoken to? How can I make sure that your mental health is just as important as your physical wellness? At work, how can I make sure that your productivity and your output is just as important as the person you are, who you show up to work as. And so I'd really love to hear your perspective on things in discussion or questions on that as we are working to kind of flush out and research that work currently. Thank you so much for listening to me and for being here today. And I look forward to any questions or comments or critiques, anything. I'm an open book. So